Why are pressure ulcers something people should take seriously?
So, pressure ulcers are one of the top drivers of loss and claims in a senior living claim. They're one of the top 10. We pay out significant dollars for claims. And every claim that we have that does have a pressure ulcer, it just compounds it and it makes it more difficult to defend. So, it is really important that in handling these claims and understanding how these pressure ulcers develop, that we know how we can defend the care that was provided and how even under the best circumstances and even under ideal care, we know that these pressure ulcers can still develop. We're going to talk about expectations management and communicating with families so that families understand that sometimes, despite ideal optimal care, their loved one may end up with a pressure ulcer. And they're difficult, they're traumatic. They're for family members sometimes to see their loved one looking at these wounds. They're not pretty to look at and they can be upsetting. So it's really important that the family understands that we expect that these may occur and what it means when we see them. Because what they really do is these wounds evolve over time. So once you see one started, it's going to evolve into its final state because a lot of the damage is underneath the level of the skin. So you see it, you know it's there, but you really can't turn the ship around, so to speak. It's going to open, it's going to evolve and do what it's going to do. It's really important to understand and that families understand when we see it, we can't really stop it. It's medically unpreventable in many cases, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. There are a lot of things that the senior living facilities do, and they are so good at doing these things and care planning and really making it a team approach in dealing with somebody that's at risk for skin breakdown. First of all, they assess them and they as soon as they come in, and that's one of the things that they're going to look for is whether or not they score in a range that puts them at risk for skin breakdown. So they have them identified immediately when they come into the building. And they're going to continue to reassess them on a regular basis, even if they don't have any skin breakdown. But they can also involve the entire team as far as nutrition, dietary, help them improve their nutritional status. That can be significant. Also, having the aides and the staff really be sure that they have enough fluid intake, pushing fluids, making sure they stay hydrated. Sometimes our elderly folks don't like to eat and drink as much as they should, and they need to be encouraged. So it's really important that they plan for that, and the entire staff is really rallied together to make sure that they're also being repositioned and they don't stay in the same position for significant amounts of time. And anytime they're uncomfortable, they're getting repositioned, and staff just know that every time they come into their room, they're going to address that and make sure that they're comfortable, move them a little bit so that they're not staying on the same side or the same pressure point. So those things are important too.
Why are pressure ulcers a risk in terms of defending claims?
A couple things. First of all, they look bad. They just look bad. And it's something that if you haven't been exposed to it and that you think there's no way this ever should have happened. They came in, they didn't have this, now they develop. It makes it really difficult. And there even people that are in healthcare have a hard time looking at these photos because they're difficult to look at. Sometimes they show exposed bone, muscle, tendon. Those are what you see when you have muscle death as part of one of these events. And we know that these events are circulatory in nature. They're about perfusion. So when perfusion is impaired, that's when these things evolve. And so there is a lot of misunderstanding too, as far as it's a pressure point. It's just that hard bony prominence. That's what caused it. When we know, and a lot of what our discussion is going to be about, and Dr. Fife can really explain how, from a physiological perspective, we know that these are circulatory perfusion injuries. It's one of those situations that by the time you see it, and by the time you know it's there, and you might have a muscle injury that's underneath the surface of the skin. So we say it's like an apple, like that rots from the inside out. So the apple might look great on the outside, but inside, if it's rotten, it's going to eventually expose that as it works its way out. So skin is the same way. So we might see it might look great on the outside, but you see some purple underneath the skin, and it can be dead tissue and really be a lot of damage underneath the skin. But by the time you see it, it's not perfectly obvious because it's not on the level of the skin surface, but it's underneath, and we know it's going to open up and it's going to show damage sometimes all the way down to the bone.
Why should people attend your session?
So I can tell you, Dr. Fife, who I'm presenting with, she's phenomenal. I've known her for, gosh, probably almost 10 years now. I first found her when I was working at a law firm defending cases in litigation as a legal nurse consultant. And we had some weird cases, but I heard her speak at a national conference and she was phenomenal. I really thought I understood wounds. I thought I knew what I was doing. I used to be a wound nurse, I did a lot of wound care. I've learned so much from her over the years, and we retained her to defend some cases for us. And she would explain to us all of these things that lead to these wounds. And we had a better understanding of how they evolve and how we can defend these and explain them to a jury and not just throw ourselves on the sword and say, oh, we messed up. This wound happened. So obviously we messed up. But to be able to explain to a jury how these things can happen and how they do happen is really beneficial. And I think everybody that attends will learn something new from Dr. Fife. I do. I always do every time I hear her speak. And she has such a great way of really explaining how these things happen from a physiological perspective. And I guarantee you, everybody will learn something that they haven't. And even if you've heard her speak, she still it just adds something to the story every time I hear her.
Anything else we missed you want people to know?
We first did this presentation a few years ago. Last year, we applied to present at ASHRM and were accepted. This year, the same thing. So many people came up to us afterwards and said that it was the best presentation that they saw at the conference. I'll give Dr. Fife all the credit for that because she's phenomenal. And from the feedback we got, a lot of people said that it was their favorite presentation of the conference. So we're thrilled to be presenting again this year. We have a better time slot. We're not first thing in the morning, but it really is a perspective that I haven't heard at the ASHRM conference. I've been going to the ASHRM conference for years. It's something that I've never heard this perspective from another speaker. So I think anybody that attends will learn something new.